You're listening to Tech Tuesday on All Sides. I'm Amy Juravich, a show where we share stories about science, technology, and the future of our environment. It used to be that sparkler on a woman's left hand had to be a diamond. After all, as the song goes, diamonds are a girl's best friend. But maybe not anymore. At least not natural diamonds. There's a growing market for lab-grown diamonds. It used to take the Earth a few billion years to grow a diamond, but now a machine can do it in as little as 5 days. Paul is a diamond and jewelry industry expert. His research is used by many of the world's largest diamond, jewelry, and luxury companies, as well as federal governments, major financial institutions, and top universities. He also hosts a podcast on the topic. Welcome to All Sides, Paul.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Can you tell me what exactly is a lab-grown diamond? How do you grow a diamond? When you think of a diamond, the Earth needs a few billion years to grow one.
Yes, I guess I would just preface it with, people that don't follow the industry as closely as I do. This technology has existed for actually a very long time. So we've been growing or producing synthetic or man-made diamonds since the 1950s and 60s. And up until about 20 years ago, almost all of that production was used for industrial use diamonds. So diamonds that are used in, say, mining equipment or construction equipment, or if you go to Home Depot and buy a tile saw blade, that's going to have synthetic diamonds. And the very large majority of that is produced in China. They've kind of been the leader in that area for decades now. And then if you kind of fast forward to maybe, 2010, we started to see larger jewelry quality man-made diamonds enter the market. And that really picked up steam, I would say, around, 2015. I wrote a research article in 2018, and I titled it "The Year of the Lab-Created Diamond." So I would say, at least over the last, 5 to 8 years in particular, the product as a diamond that's actually used in jewelry has, grown, quite rapidly. It's become a mainstream product. So the takeaway is, the technology has existed for quite some time, but it's just kind of been recent years that you started to see it available in a mainstream level, and that comes down to prices. So there's two ways that they primarily produce these diamonds. They try to, recreate the conditions that are naturally found in nature. So it's, they have these presses that use very high pressure and temperature to try to essentially squeeze carbon into a diamond. And then there's another technology that uses microwave technology to produce diamonds that way. And I would say both technologies have realized, rapid advancements in the production technologies. And this has also been driven by, other industries that use, for instance, the microwave technologies used by the solar industry and the LED light bulb industry. So the bottom line is these productions have been, the advancements in the technology has been, rapidly improving, and that's resulted in higher production volumes, but more importantly, much lower prices. And I think, at the end of the day, prices for lab diamond, they are maybe 1/10 the price of a natural diamond. That's ultimately what's driven the product to be mainstream. So again, they existed, 15, 20 years ago, but the price was essentially the same as a natural diamond. So that price differential, which is a result of the advancements in production technology, that's kind of really what's driven the lab-grown diamond, if you will, to be a mainstream product.
Now, do these lab-grown diamonds look and feel the same as natural diamonds? Like to the naked eye, if you were just looking quickly, can you tell the difference?
Yeah, so it's chemically diamond. You probably are not going to be able to tell with the naked eye. I guess I would just note that with some of these other colorless gemstones, whether it's moissanite or white sapphire, or even like cubic zirconia in certain instances, you probably aren't going to easily be able to tell the difference. So this isn't a new dynamic for the industry, per se. But more often than not, you're going to want a professional, gemological lab like the GIA, which is the largest gem lab in the world. They're based in California. You want a company like that to verify whether you're looking at a natural or manufactured diamond.
Now, you said that in recent years, the cost of lab-grown diamonds has come down, so therefore more people can afford them. Are people gravitating toward them? Do people want them, I guess is my question.
So I think the reality is, I think all else equal, I think most people would prefer a natural diamond that was, formed 1 to 5 billion years ago in the Earth's mantle. It was brought to the surface of the Earth by a volcano. I mean, it's a pretty r romantic narrative, if you will. And I think, people like the idea of a diamond being a treasure of the Earth, if you will. So I think, when we're talking about luxury products here, I think if we're talking about diamonds used for, again, abrasive or industrial applications, I don't think the user really cares where it came from. They just want the cheapest one that performs the best. I think with jewelry, again, it's an emotional purchase. It's not necessarily a practical purchase. So I think the source origin does matter to a lot of consumers. I think, the question at this point becomes, given that the lab grown version is so much cheaper than the natural version, consumers have somewhat of a difficult decision to
Mhm.
make. It's like, you could buy a 1 carat natural diamond, it's going to cost you, $5,000 to $6,000 if we're talking a medium quality diamond. You can buy, the man-made version of that for, well under $1,000, probably, $500 or even less. So at the end of the day, again, this comes down to price. And the way I like to look at it is it's another, option for consumers. And, for some consumers that, having a diamond that's natural and rare and valuable is, really important to them. And, especially if it's a gift like an engagement ring, they feel that makes it more special. But if you're just looking for, a diamond that's going to be beautiful, the lab grown version, could achieve that for you at a much, much lower price.
This is Tech Tuesday from All Sides on 89.7 NPR News, and we're talking about diamonds, real ones and lab grown, with Paul Zimnisky, a diamond and jewelry industry expert. Now, Paul, I saw one example in a story from the public radio show Marketplace. They said that lab grown diamonds were visually and molecularly identical to mined diamonds, but a fraction of the price. So their example was a pair of 1 carat diamond earrings, which is roughly the size of a pencil eraser, would cost $3,000. But the lab grown version costs $800. Are you seeing that as an example of, because you say, okay, maybe the engagement ring sounds like something that needs to be a real diamond because of the symbolic significance of getting married. But what about the earrings? Can $800 is certainly less than 3,000.
Yeah, significantly less. And to put this in context, so again, go back, 10 years ago, and the lab grown version was maybe 10% less expensive than the natural. And today it's, 90% in cases even, greater than 90% less than the equivalent natural. So the price, dynamic has been, very, very volatile and very, fast moving. I think at the end of the day, if we look, where are we going to be 10 years into the future? I think the price of most lab diamonds are going to be, well under $1,000. Maybe some of them will be under $100. And I think you'll see the price of, natural diamonds will, remain in that, thousands of dollar price points and higher. So again, it's going to come down to, what's important to the consumer. And I think you make a good point. I think, for maybe a more special gift like an engagement ring, that having a natural diamond is more important to some people. But if you're buying a pair of earrings or a tennis bracelet, which if you're buying a tennis bracelet with, a lot of diamond caratage, it could be extremely expensive and maybe not affordable for a lot of people. So, a lab-grown version of, say, a tennis bracelet is something that would be more affordable.
Now, well-known jewelry creator De Beers recently announced that it's closing its lab-grown diamond business that they called Lightbox. This move is seen as a firm allegiance to natural gems, but also there was a big drop in price of those lab-grown diamonds, so maybe De Beers just wasn't making any money. What do you make of the De Beers announcement?
Yeah, so De Beers has always been, primarily a natural diamond entity. I think they kind of experimented with the lab-grown diamond. It was, if you just look at the amount of, capital expenditure they spend on, their business, I mean, the lab diamond was probably, well under 5% of what they spend. I mean, they'll spend, billions of dollars to develop a diamond mine. I think they spent a couple hundred million on the lab diamond venture. So I think it was kind of more just maybe dipping a toe, into the water. I think they were ultimately trying to use maybe their distribution and their marketing, ability to maybe help communicate the difference between the lab-grown diamond and the natural diamond in consumers' minds. I think that's kind of been a challenge, from an industry standpoint, is kind of getting that communication right. I think again, if you aren't, focused on this industry
Hmm.
on a daily basis as I am, I think it's kind of confusing, what the two products really are. And I think a lot of people are so unsure. Can you definitely tell the difference between the two? Can you not? Um, so I think these are the sort of things that the industry kind of really has to kind of work through. And I think, it's going to take time, but I think we'll get to the point where most people understand the differences. And just as an anecdote, my mom's engagement ring was a manufactured emerald in the 1970s, and
Mm.
she's an artist and she wanted a colored stone, and natural emeralds, they tend to have a lot of inclusions, and she wanted a cleaner stone, so it kind of made sense for her at that time, and that was. I mean, what's the math on that? I mean, 40, 50 years ago. So,
Yeah.
again, this isn't a brand new, phenomenon. I think what's new is how inexpensive the manufactured diamond product has become. That's kind of the new development here.
Now, the lab grown diamonds, I mean, you mentioning the emerald made me think of this, but can you get them in different colors? I guess, because like a diamond, that the earth spent a billion years making, it comes as it comes.
Yeah, very good point. So, with manufactured gemstones, yes, I mean that's kind of the whole thing. We can kind of produce, what we want. We can produce them in the size, the color, the clarity, the shape. They're essentially made to order, and again, that's why the price point is so different. I mean, natural diamonds to non-renewable natural resource. They're kind of available, in what nature gives us. With the manufactured version, we could produce them in a particular color, a custom color, a color that you wouldn't find in nature. So you could actually have a green diamond, or you could have a manufactured emerald or a ruby. So there's a lot more options, but again, the rarity factor is completely different.
Now, we're talking about lab grown diamonds, but the lab can grow. Can you do lab grown emeralds, lab grown rubies, all of it?
Yeah, so the colored gemstone, again, they've been, available on a mainstream level for a long time now, for decades. So they were kind of the precursor. And you can go to your local jeweler and you could, probably find a beautiful 1 carat ruby or emerald, a synthetic or a manufactured version for, well under $100, probably
Hmm.
40, $50. And it's a nice piece of jewelry and it makes a nice gift. But if you want, the natural version of that ruby or emerald in a good quality, it's going to be thousands of dollars. So, again, this dynamic has been at play with other types of gemstones in the past, and yes, those colored gemstones, I would say include the sapphire with that as well. They've been available for decades now. They kind of really went mainstream, I would say, like in the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah. So, about 2 decades ago, there was a movie, Blood Diamond, that became popular. Do you think this movie had an effect on the popularity of diamonds, or made people think more about diamonds than they had in the past, and maybe that helped expand the lab grown diamond industry?
Yeah, so that was a very popular movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio. I think that definitely, set a narrative in a lot of consumers' minds. What I will tell you is that if you talk to people that were in the industry around that time, they said the year that that movie came out was actually a good year for the natural diamond industry because people were thinking about diamonds. And they said, the diamond that I bought is not a blood diamond; it's a clean diamond, and that's kind of the way they were thinking about it. But I think just they always say that the PR and the publicity is good. It's a sort of situation where I think people were thinking about diamonds because of that movie, and the natural diamond industry actually had a good year. The reality is the very large majority of natural diamonds are produced by very large corporations that are heavily regulated. A lot of them are publicly traded companies. So it's really not, a problem this day and age. But if you go like, further back into the past, yeah, I mean, there was definitely diamonds that were produced, in regions that were involved in civil conflict, and that's basically what that movie was based on. So I think, from a marketing standpoint, what some of these lab-grown diamond companies have done is say, well, it's 100%, definitely not going to be a diamond that came from a conflict, region, since we produced it in this, manufacturing facility or factory. So I think it's kind of been more of a kind of a marketing narrative more so than anything else. I mean, it really that really hasn't been an issue for the diamond industry for a long time.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask, are there still ethical concerns out there, or they basically have everything is certified now and it's not as much of a concern?
Yeah, I think the transparency is significantly better than it was in the past. I mean, I would, urge consumer that is looking to buy a diamond, ask the jeweler, where it came from. They should be able to tell you that information. If they can't, maybe try someone else.
Hmm.
Because the industry's, worked, quite diligently trying to, increase the transparency and we're getting to the point now where you're going to be able to tell the consumer where the diamond came from. And I think that actually, makes the story around the diamond much more interesting if you kind of have that story.
Hmm. Are there any ethical concerns with lab-grown diamonds?
So what I would say is the large majority of the lab-grown diamonds are produced in the Eastern world. Let's say mostly China and India. These are just manufacturing superpowers, and
Hmm.
they've done a very good job getting the cost of production down, which is a lot of it has to do with economies of scale. So basically, the more you produce, the lower the per unit cost. So they've kind of like really taken this product and run with it. It's a question of how much energy does it take, right, to produce a diamond, and it requires a lot of energy. It requires infrastructure to build it. You still need mine materials to build the equipment. So I think kind of the narrative that lab diamonds are great for the environment and natural diamonds are bad, that's way too simplified. It's much
Hmm.
more nuanced than that. I think for a consumer that's really, really interested in, say, the environmental aspect of this, the best option is going to be a repurposed or recycled diamond. If you buy a diamond that was, mined, 50 or 100 years ago, it's not going to have any additional carbon footprint if you were to buy that. So that's kind of what I would urge, the consumer that's really interested in that to look into. And the reason that's not more popular is just because there really isn't an advocate for it. The natural diamond companies want you to buy a new diamond, and the lab diamond companies want you to buy a new diamond. So there's really not anybody advocating, for buying a secondhand diamond, even though that is the option that provides the lowest environmental footprint.
So, okay, so for that low environmental footprint, where do I find old diamonds?
Yeah, I mean, so some jewelers will have it.
Hmm.
That's kind of the thing. It's like the industry really isn't incentivized to sell them.
Yeah.
So it's not, as mainstream. But I think if you kind of do your work, you will find, secondhand diamonds available. There's some cool, vintage stuff where you can get an old diamond that was kind of recut, using newer technology. I mean, they are available, but unfortunately, it's not as easy to find those as it is a new diamond.
Well, I guess we'll just end with, do diamond purists, a jewelry store or even a company as big as De Beers, do they hate lab grown diamonds?
So I think they're kind of focused on their product, right? And again, I think what's ultimately the saving grace for the diamond industry is that, again, it's a luxury product. It's an emotional purchase. It's not a practical purchase. People buy because it makes them feel good. And for the same reason, people buy any luxury item, whether it's a high-end watch or a high-end handbag or a high-end pair of shoes. It's like it kind of makes you feel good, right? And I think it's kind of difficult to again replicate the idea that a natural diamond is multi-billion years old and it was brought to Earth through a volcano. It's kind of a pretty cool backstory, and it's more valuable because of that. And I think the cost of a luxury item definitely impacts the way that consumer perceives or feels about it. It's essentially the economic law of Veblen good. It's like the higher the price, the more desired it becomes because everybody can have it. You can't have as many as you want. So all of these factors are at play here, and that's kind of what makes it such an interesting industry to analyze.
Hmm. Well, I want to thank you for your time. That was Paul Zimnisky, a diamond and jewelry industry analyst. Thank you so much for joining us today, Paul.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
And coming up, we're going to talk with Russell Hawley. We're going to hear about the Chromebook challenge, which has turned out to be quite dangerous. That's when Tech Tuesday continues on All Sides on 89.7 NPR News.